Our next panel is themed Surprising Paths to CEO, Inspiring Women's Success. This panel is presented by NASCAR and IMSA. This session celebrates the remarkable journeys of women who have reached the pinnacle of leadership through non-traditional routes. These trailblazers have defied conventional career trajectories, carving their paths to CEO positions through innovation, resilience, and determination. Join us as they share their stories of overcoming obstacles, seizing opportunities, and redefining success on their terms. From breaking barriers in male-dominated industries to championing diversity and inclusion, these women offer invaluable insights and inspiration for aspiring leaders everywhere. Your moderator for this panel is Lauri Eberhart. She is the CEO of Friends of Laguna Seca. Friends of Laguna Seca is a nonprofit organization for the Laguna Seca Raceway and recreation area for advancement of the greater community of Monterey County. She was hired by Friends after a successful career in sports law and motorsports operations and promotions, including general counsel of SMI and Charlotte Motor Speedway for over 12 years and ran day-to-day operations of Charlotte Motor Speedway for 3 years. She has a law degree from Wake Forest University and is a WMNA board member. Joining Lauri for this panel is Eugenia Campagna, the founder and CEO of Motorsports Technical School. I love that with these cards, a lot of this information is submitted by the individual. The first bullet that I have on this card is dedicated her entire life to motorsport. In 1993, she started racing after winning 2 racing competitions, one with rally cars, the other on the track. Was amongst a few female racing drivers in the 90s, running with an official Alfa Romeo team. In 2022, at the Monza Formula One Grand Prix, she was awarded the Motorsport Passion Award, given exclusively to someone through work, professionalism, and passion have contributed to achieving the highest technological goals in F1 and in motorsports. Connie Nyholm is the co-owner and CEO of Virginia International Raceway. A born entrepreneur, Nyholm invested in VIR in 1998 with its founding partner, Harvey Siegel, and has since taken VIR from near abandonment over 25 years ago to one of the top 6 road courses in North America. VIR is a one-of-a-kind racing facility and a motorsport resort that includes on-site lodging. Thank you, I like staying there, Connie. Dining, team building, on-track and off-road driving experiences, sports shooting, karting, and the Virginia Motorsports Technology Park. Member of the Road Racing Drivers Club and the Road Racing Industry Council, before her entrepreneurial role at VIR, Connie was a very successful real estate developer. And rounding out this panel to kick off the afternoon session is Kim Pendergast, the chairman, CEO, and owner of Magnuson Products, managing partner of Pendergast Partners, LLC, a private equity management company that invests in technology-driven companies in an automotive aftermarket industry. She was previously an investor in MSD Ignition and the CEO and owner of Arrington Engines, who did R&D for Dodge and engines for NASCAR teams. She speaks German and Spanish and conducts the Waters Global Forum, whose history dates back to the Marshall Plan in 1948. Welcome, Kim.
Well, welcome, everybody. So glad you're here. I want to say thank you to everybody in the audience. I must tell you, I've been coming to this conference since the beginning, and when I walked into the back of the room, I just said, wow. This is really impressive with what we built together and how many women are interested in motorsports. And it really is a testament to what women has put together, but also this wave of interest in women's sports that we have. So I'm really happy to be here, happy for all our panelists. First thing I want to say This is the title of our seminar, is Surprising Paths to CEO. So I want to say congratulations to all of us on the stage for getting here. We got to the CEO seat. Woohoo! So Eugenie just came off a plane from Italy, and so we will be careful with her English and make sure that you're taking. We'll talk slowly.
Jet lag. It's an excuse.
So I have some. First thing I want to do is have each of us, talk about your path. How did you get from the beginning of your career to your CEO career? Kim, I'm going to start with you there, because I think there's a lot of education for particularly the young students and the younger people in the audience about exactly how your path took place.
Well, that's a scary thought. Since you mentioned since the language was mentioned, I will say one of my early tries, unsuccessful tries at being a CEO, was that I decided that the Indiana Farm Girl Goes Global was going to be my weight at the top. So in college, I was determined to learn 2 languages, and I was determined that I was going to go overseas. And the reason was I interned after my sophomore year of college with DuPont, and nobody could make any decisions. It was mind-numbing. The second year I went back and interned, there was a guy that swooped in from Brussels, and he was a young guy, and he was making all the decisions for DuPont overseas. And so I said, well, the trick is you go overseas, they'll let you do anything, and then you show them what you can do, and you can come back. So meanwhile, I insist in my first job that in the first 2 years they have to send me overseas. And I got several offers, including DuPont, and I went directly overseas to Germany. And after about a year, the president said, do you want to be our local German expert, or do you want to play in Yankee Stadium? And he yanked me back to the United States. Wow. So that wasn't the path to CEO, but I think without boring you with all the details, the path was perseverance. I just kept trying way after way after way until I got there. I quit corporate America. I started my own business. I tried consulting. I tried investing in other people. I tried doing large deals, and I got kicked out of them at the last minute. And I finally said, I have to do a deal that's small enough that I'm the money man, and then they don't have a choice. I'm going to be the CEO. And that was really the answer. So I guess it's always the money. Follow the money. That's how you get there.
Follow the money, for sure. That's a good lesson. And by trade, you're a finance person. Finance person in accounting is your
Yes.
vocation.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Connie, tell us your
spend
story.
a lot more money than I find.
We all do.
I know. I just keep wanting to build stuff, so I never get to hold on to very much. But my path is somewhat similar to yours. You were at Arrington Motors, and I grew up in Martinsville, Virginia. Moved to New York after a couple years with Procter & Gamble and worked for HBO and hung out with a bunch of attorneys because I found out that's where a lot of my business law passion, came from. And then I went off on my own and started a business in commercial real estate development, commercial real estate leasing, focusing on the retail segment. And there I met this amazing woman, Marianne Savarese, who worked for Simon here locally, and she wanted to start a networking group of women in retail real estate. So we called it WIRE. And there were 7 of us, and we focused on women in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, because when we would go to the big shopping center conventions, we were just lost in that big room of big developers. But it only took a couple years till we had to rent out Sardi's in Times Square to have our meetings. So it was very successful. And through that, I met Peggy Burke, who worked for Harvey Siegel, who is my founding partner at VIR. So he put VIR under contract and then turned to Peggy and said, now what? And she said, well, I know a girl who's from down that way, and maybe she'll help you. Harvey and I met. It was like 2 peas in a pod. We had very complementary strengths and weaknesses. So I joined on with VIR as his integrator to his vision. And then over the years, I took over as visionary, and now Kerrigan Smith is my integrator. So it's been a 25-year journey for me at VIR, but it's a big difference in being a CEO and a COO and all the steps up to it. So most of my job is now outside the gate, raising money, doing politics, negotiating zoning and things like that.
So it sounds like you were the original OG with women in real estate and now women in motorsports. There's some parallels there.
Very
But
much.
what's interesting, we talk about it a little bit more in depth, is your network and using your network and who knows who and who can introduce you to who
Absolutely.
on your way up.
Yes, and so just being receptive. When Peggy called and said, would you interview with Harvey? And I'm like, why? You talk about him like he's an idiot. And she said, well, he's not that bad.
He's worse.
Yeah, yeah, I ended up interviewing him because he was so distracted. But, you know, he just turned 90, and we're just going to celebrate our 25th anniversary of reopening March 17, 25. And so he and I are going to do a little Q&A for our staff and club members.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
It's fun.
Eugenie, tell us your story.
Yes, I was born with a big, huge passion for motorsports. I used to race. I work as a sport driving instructor. I work as team manager in motorsport, and I'm the CEO of the MTS, that is the Motorsport Technical School. It's a school that trains technicians in motorsport, mechanics, race engineers, data engineers, and a lot, many other roles in motorsport, technical roles in motorsport. I started racing because I was very lucky. I won 2 selections, one with the rally car and another on track, and with the magazine that proposed this, and I received a call from a team that asked me to race. So this was my start in racing. I raced with an Alfa Romeo official team. It was at the 90s, was a bit tough for women because we are very few, and I never finish a race with some scratch in the car because it's difficult for a driver to be overtaken from a girl. So by a girl, so it's my car finished the race every time with scratches. But okay, and then I always say that I moved from the track to the other side of the wall, of the pit wall. I started working as team manager. I work with some official GT teams with Ferrari, Porsche, and Aston Martin. I won many championships with my teams, but my past as racing driver helped me a lot to understand all the dynamics of a race event and to make my team a winner. This helped me a lot. And working as team manager, I remember I was in Valencia circuit for the GT Open race, and I met some students that gave me a flyer about a school in Spain that trained mechanics, and I have a light bulb, and I decided to open the school in Italy, because in Italy we have many passionate enthusiasts about motorsport. You know, we have some important brands like Ferrari, like Dallara, like Lamborghini, Bugatti, Ducati, because we train also for motorbikes. And I decided to open the school in Italy. I went to the Monza International Circuit to speak with them, and they liked the idea, and they decided to host the school. So they helped me a lot. Otherwise, I couldn't start. And I started with 4 instructors. One was the chief mechanic of Schumacher, and me, and 1 course. Now, after 14 years, we have 14 courses, 60 instructors, and 7 person in my staff. The 87% of placement of my student in racing teams, 13% in MotoGP and Formula One, 5% of females, and that's it.
I think that's fantastic, what you're doing, absolutely fantastic. You know, just it was like 40%, what's your placement rate of your students? Was 40% placement rate in Formula One? 80?
No, in
85.
Formula One, 13.
13%, it's still incredible
13%,
to place those many students, so.
And I have the chance to drive a Formula One car when I was, because racing helped me to enter in a sport driving school as instructor, and I work for 2 schools. One is the school of the former Formula One driver Siegfried Storr, and the other was the school of a big important magazine that is Quattro Ruote in Italy, and this is a magazine where you can read the test of the new release of the car. And I test for them some sports car, and they send me to test a Formula One car too.
Super fun. That's great. That's great. I think it's great to know everybody's story. I want to seize on this as something you're not prepared for, but I know you ladies can talk about this. That transition from the CEO or being the doer to the CEO of being the visionary. Connie, you brought it up. Can you expound on that a little bit? How you managed that transition successfully?
Well, I think what we did was decide how to divide and conquer. And I'm a Vistage member. It's a small, it's a coaching group for small and medium-sized company CEOs, mostly entrepreneurs. And so I became a Vistage member, and I would come home every Tuesday of every month, once a month, with a lesson from that speaker, and I was just wearing staff out. One day I came in, and Kerrigan was in his office just poring over an organizational chart and struggling with coming up with the next vision of how we wanted to grow. And I said, well, Kerrigan, you need to read this book, Traction, by Gino Wickman. And it's not an org chart, it's an accountability chart. And every position has their 3 primary tasks, and it will really change the way you think about structure. And so Kerrigan said, well, I don't read books. I said, well, you're going to read this one. And so he read it, and he came in on Monday and said, I could have written that book. And so we got an integrator, and we adopted the Traction methodology of holding meetings and holding people accountable and your role. And so if I'm doing a special project in a marketing role, then I report to the marketing director. When I'm in the CEO role, they report to me. And so we just try to stay in our lanes, have the right person in the right seat at the right bus at the right time, and that sort of thing. And it really freed me up to be a bigger thinker and to work more outside the gate and build political alliances and whatnot, which I am way better at than being a COO. So it just freed me up to do what I was meant to do and what I really love to do.
That's great. It's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Kim, do you have a similar story, or do you have people you've coached? I mean, you've coached a lot of people and had a lot of different companies. Maybe if you haven't had the transition, but maybe you coached somebody through that transition.
Well, I've always sort of had to do it all because I've ended up in smaller companies, and I've been a serial entrepreneur. I didn't talk about it earlier, but I think I've founded 7 companies in my lifetime. 2 of them pretty quickly got to close to $100 million in a little less than a year. Those were the lucky ones. The other ones didn't do quite as well. But I think there are 2 pieces that are important, and I'm going to step back from COO, CEO, and I'm going to say the first tough thing for me, and I think it may be more as a woman than just as a young person, which is I had to move from looking up to people, listening to people, and doing my job, and being sort of that eager beaver, good talent in the organization, to the person who's leading, and people have to follow. And you interact with people in a very different way. It's still very cordial. It's still a collegial atmosphere, at least in our organization, because that's how I like to run it. but it is a very different dynamic, and it's a difficult dynamic, I think, in particular for a woman to make the switch, because what works to get you where you are is not necessarily going to work to get you where you want to be. And then you have that separate one, which we all deal with, which is the internal running the organization well. And I think of the COO as a person that has the KPIs and they know how to make the numbers. But the CEO has got to figure out how to keep that company sustainable. And I'll use our example right now. We make superchargers, and superchargers are, this isn't totally true, but for purposes of today's discussion, really only good for internal combustion engines. So when you have a business in the state of California and the state of California bans internal combustion engines, you have a sustainability issue. And that really gets your focus on the business to say, we've got operations, we have to keep going, but how are we going to transform ourselves so that we have a business in the future? And I've always said to my guys, and they mostly are guys, let's be honest, there's only one thing employees will never forgive you for, and it's not whether you give them a raise or a bonus or even whether you yell at them. They will never forgive you if they lose your job because you blew it with the company. They expect you as the CEO to make the right sorts of decisions to keep that place going. And that is the one job that you cannot fail at. And it's hard. It can be very hard. It can be easy for a while, but in these transition times, it can be extremely difficult.
It causes you, that's a great question about sustainability, because in the seat, you really have to make decisions about the future, what your market currently looks like, what your market is going to look like, and then are you nimble enough to adjust to mitigate those dangers that come up, because things are changing all the time, particularly in our sport.
Right, and so at the same time, you have to be very open.
Right.
Because you have to look at the world in with a broader lens, but then you also have to be decisive. And you can't be the person who's decisive and then it doesn't work out and you go to another firm because it's your firm.
Right.
So you have to be decisive and you have to be right, which means that I will always forgive people who are in the company and make a mistake, but it's harder for me to forgive somebody in the company who makes a mistake and then leaves because they don't have to live with their mistake. Because I think as the CEO of a company, and if you're the owner of a company, and I'm always honestly a little more for that perspective, you have to make it work. You have no choice.
Yeah, it is
We call it fail small, fail early.
Fail small, fail early. Yeah, take those little risks that you could take. Eugenia, I'm going to ask you, if you had to give some advice to your younger self or when you were starting out to get to your position, what would you tell your younger self?
Don't be afraid to be judged.
Yeah.
And never let a no to stop you.
Right, right.
Yes, it's very important.
It's very important to have that fearlessness at a young age and to really push yourself that way.
If you have a passion, you have to follow it. If you believe in a dream, if you want if you have a dream, you have to believe in it.
If you had your career to do over again, is there something you would change about your path up, or something if you had to do it all over again?
In my path to CEO, nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Good for you!
But I changed something. When I work as team manager, I can't forget it. I was fighting for the championship with my team. The last race that was in Spain, in circuit Catalonia, we had the pole position, and during the starting procedure, the pit lane is open 10 minutes usually. And I decided to let the car enter in the exit the pit lane 1 minute before the race director crossed the pit lane, and we was fighting. We were fighting with the Ferrari car, and I was working with Aston Martin, and our car was the only Aston Martin in the group, and there were many Ferrari, more than 10, then Lamborghini, Porsche, etc. And Ferrari decided to have the same strategy as ours, and they decided to leave the pit lane in the same moment as us. And when I gave the okay to go to my driver, he started, and 20 meters before the exit, the race director closed the pit lane.
Oh no!
Yes. So, and Ferrari behind us. So both cars started from the pit lane.
Oh gosh.
Okay, and we had the pole position. And during the race, we finished fourth, but was very hard to overtake all the other Ferrari. And the other Ferrari, for them was easier to pass and to arrive. So we lost the championship in the last race.
You would definitely do that over.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to hear her say Ferrari.
And Lamborghini, and Ducati.
And I work with Ferrari in Italy. I train model makers for Ferrari Formula One. But, okay.
Connie, do you have something you would do over if you had to do it all again?
Oh my God, so much. Just a bunch of small things. I mean, we luckily, because of fail small, fail early, we experimented a lot before we jumped into the deep end. But when we first opened up, and as was Harvey's dream, we opened up as VIR, a Motorsport Country Club. And it took us probably 15 years to outlive that moniker. We changed it some years back to VIR, a Motorsport Resort, which we got basically from the Dallas Cowboys, America's team. So that was a little bit tough. I think we hired too soon and fired too late in our earlier years. Now we have a staff that's very seasoned, very little turnover, but we vet them very carefully, you know, coming on board from a cultural perspective more than a skill set perspective. So
How big is your staff?
we have about 360 on staff, which is 123 full-time equivalents, and then we have another 126 in our industrial park. And I just learned that when you achieve more than 250, you're a big dog.
Well, congratulations.
At least in our little rural environment. So the economic developers are paying a lot more attention. In fact, we've been working diligently to get funding for a water line to Danville since 2017, and we just got a $10.5 million grant this year.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes, thank you.
That's hard work.
So now we can pee and poo.
It's not just one or the other. Kim, how about you? Do you have a do-over that you would do over in your career if you had the chance to?
Well, in one sense, there's so many, but I think one of the things that I learned a while back was that I had to go through everything I went through to be where I am today. So it's a journey, and there is no there. You're just continually learning and continually improving. And I kind of feel like I had to go through all those rocky starts. I had to make all those mistakes. I think if I went back, in reality, I'd make the same ones again, but I learned from them. So I guess no, I wouldn't.
I think your journey, again, and the whole title is The Surprising Path to the CEO. I think your journey, whether it's a good experience or a bad experience, you can always learn something from it. And I don't know if you've ever had the experience I have in my career where I was in a position, in a job, I didn't necessarily like. Actually, I really didn't like it. I did well because I'm always goal-oriented and I could perform the job, but I didn't really like it. But in my mind, that was something to learn that I really don't want to do that ever again, you know? And so you figure out how your path gets to where you end up. But I think all those experiences add up, and they, in my mind, they're the arrows in your quiver that you need to shoot out and use at different times in your experience.
I think, and I said a little bit at the beginning, my sweet spot is having my own business, running my own business, and being CEO. And what that meant was I had to downscale. I had to buy businesses that I had personally in my life, put enough capital, enough pennies together to be able to buy, and not try to look at bigger opportunities, because that wasn't going to give me the joy, because I wasn't going to end up in the role I wanted, and I wasn't going to be able to do what I wanted with the company. And that was one of the questions I kind of wanted to ask the audience, and I know I'm not the moderator, but I mean, how many people in this audience would think they would like to be a CEO one day?
Let's see, raise your hands. It looks like about 10%, 15% maybe. Interesting.
It's a tough job.
It's a really tough job.
Lauri, tell us your pathway.
Oh, my pathway?
What you would do differently. Answer our questions.
Okay, all at the same time? So I started my motorsports career at Michigan International Speedway. It was my high school job. I was 15 years old. I went to work at Michigan International Speedway when Roger Penske owned it, and I was the assistant to the public relations director, and I did media credentials, and that was my summertime job, and it was a great summertime job. And I met a lot of people in motorsports. I did that through high school. I went to college in Allentown, Pennsylvania, is when Roger Penske built and Mario Andretti built a speedway in Nazareth, Pennsylvania. I worked there when I was in college. Then I went to Wake Forest Law School, and I worked at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So looking back at it, I just kept working at speedways all along. When I had my first job at Charlotte Motor Speedway, I was hired as their in-house counsel, so I was their lawyer for Charlotte Motor Speedway. I did that for 12 years, but started with the company when it was a private company with 2 speedways, and worked as their corporate attorney as it grew to a public company worth $1 billion, traded on the New York Stock Exchange, but 8 speedways. So all the mergers and acquisitions and the construction of Sonoma Raceway, Texas Motor Speedway, Las Vegas Motor Speedway, all the renovations at Bristol Motor Speedway, all those renovations, I was there when they were doing all that work. And it was a great, absolutely fantastic time, absolutely wonderful. I moved into the day-to-day operations at Charlotte Motor Speed my last 3 years there. With some management changes, I moved on and worked at Richmond International Raceway, the Hall of Fame. Then the last 10 years, I've been running my own law firm, Apollo Sports and Entertainment Law Group. It's a 100% female-owned law firm, 1 of 2 partners, and we practice in the sports and entertainment space. And so having the legal background, but also the motorsports background, my law practice was mostly motorsports. It was racing teams, it was racing drivers, it was motorsports companies, but also people outside of it. You may have seen American Cornhole League or heard of the Charlotte Checkers, or did some of the work, but grew it from a local firm into a national law firm. This opportunity came up because I knew the people that are the board of directors of the Friends of Laguna Seca back in 2016, when the county of Monterey originally put out an RFP for a new management company, and I worked with them on a consulting basis to pull together the business plan, to answer the RFP, to pull together the strategy. So fast forward about a year ago, when they won the contract, they called and said, "Hey, do you want to come run Laguna Seca?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd really like to do that. Sounds like a ton of fun. Let me go." So I moved to California, and that's my story. And when I look back on it, what would I do differently? I would not be so insecure, and I would not be so afraid to really push opportunities. I felt I kind of in some ways held my back because I was the only woman in the room. There were a lot of big egos with the big personalities, and building $100 million improvements and $50 million improvements, and going on the New York Stock Exchange, doing all these really big things. But now I look back, and those are experiences I can pull from because I've done it. But also, I think a lot in your career is just saying yes when the opportunity arises. Just saying, sure, I'll take the risk, or I'll raise my hand, or I'll do something, and that always leads to opportunities.
My dad always said that if there's something you really want to do, and the worst possible outcome you can imagine is tolerable, take the risk.
Right. Take the risk.
Yeah, I was slow to get to living that life, but it makes a big difference.
Yeah. But it is a big shift from that doing, Kim, to your point, from the doing, here's a task and do it, that's one thing, to now what are the tasks and what are the decisions and what tasks do you want to do and how do you want to build that sustainable model and how do you want to structure your company? So,
one of the things that I think is hard, and you asked what would I do differently, I think what's very hard is having a mirror and understanding early on what you do well Now, if you're a race car driver and you're passionate about it, maybe it's a little easier, or you're a musician, you're passionate about it, it's a little easier. But I think for a lot of people, understanding what their gifts are, some people use the word superpower, I heard that earlier today, helps put you in a position to be successful and maybe find that place, whether you're going to be the CEO or the COO, or whether you're going to, run the garage, or whatever the place is that is your passion and your interest, understanding what your strengths are. And then frankly, you've got to lean into your strengths and shore up your weaknesses, but most importantly, lean into your strengths. And I don't think we always know what they are coming out of school, because school doesn't tell us that.
No, school doesn't. School expects you to be good at everything, right? It's only when you get in your career say, oh, I'm only good at this little section over here. I'm really good at English. I'm not good at math. Or I'm good at math. I'm not good at. You're really good at math because you know how to racing and all that. You're not good at English. But I think realizing what those weaknesses are. I went to, when I was promoted, I had one of my bosses sent me to the Center for Creative Leadership in Greensboro, North Carolina.
We do experiences for them.
Yeah. But one of the things they identified was a weakness that I had, and it's organization. And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm like, I went to law school. Of course I'm organized. I'm doing all, but and then when I started observing it, I was like, oh, I need some help there. I need these kinds of help. And you realize what you can do well and where you need to supplement with others around you for those other things. And I think it's being very self-aware with that.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, that anybody can probably do the job if they have the right people around them, and it's
Right.
understanding who those people are and making sure that you have them as part of your team.
Yes, and I know, Kim, we talked about a little bit on our, when we were gathering in our pre-notes, you do a lot of, with your human resources and how you're building your teams together. Can you talk a little bit about how you structure your teams?
Well, I'm the kind of person, so I'm not big on the details. I force myself to do them, but it's not my forte. So I give my key guys a lot of rope, and I let them do their thing. And so that's how that gets organized. And if you get the right team together, it's fantastic. And I have the right team right now, and I'm having the time. Because when's the best time? It's right now, the time of my life. I've never had such a good team. But some teams need more discipline and more detail, and I probably wouldn't be the right CEO for those people. But there is some discussion that we had, which is maybe a little different than what you just asked about, and that's the realization that women have probably different things to work on than men do as they're moving along. And I asked the question about how many people in the audience really want to be a CEO, because maybe a lot of women in the audience don't want to be a CEO. And so one of the things that you'll find out if you were to read this book, and I can share it with you later, is that men tend to want money, and they want power, and they want title. Totally cool. Women tend, not all, to want flexibility. They want to enjoy their job. They want camaraderie. They want it to work well. Now, not all men are that way. Not all women are that way. But we are, on average, different. And so the things that we need to help us be better are going to be different than what most men might need if they were going to get better in an area. So, I mean, one of them, am I going in the right place?
Yes, go in the right direction. Give us a practical example of what you're talking about, how you use that information.
So somebody, I just learned a new word today, microaggression.
Microaggression. All right.
So
Very good
somebody,
to have just learned it today.
yeah.
Somebody
No, they
changed
were
your
not
meeting on you?
Look, in the 70s, they weren't microaggressions.
It's like somebody changed your meeting on you at the last minute and expected you to be there?
So, okay, where were we? We were doing,
How do you use this difference between, in general, men's goals in the workplace and women's?
Okay, rumination.
Yes.
Rumination, cows. So somebody does a microaggression, and they really irritate you, and you're upset about it, and they make you feel bad, like you did it, it's unjust because you didn't really do anything wrong, but they don't get it. And so now for the next 6 weeks, you are chewing your cud, you are ruminating, you are going through your head about, it wasn't really your fault, they didn't understand, you tell all your friends, you discuss it with them, and it goes on and on. Guys don't do that. Guys just move on. They don't care. And so it isn't that you're never going to be upset when it happens, but the sooner you can figure out to move on, probably the better. Another one that is interesting with respect to men and women in general is that men are very good at understanding how to create space for themselves. And creating space for themselves makes them seem more powerful. So they will come into a room like this at the table, and they'll talk from a position of confidence and power. Now, as more people come into the room, and we women are sitting there, we're moving our stuff down so that there's more room for everybody.
We do.
And
We do.
we do, because, and it's one of our strengths, we are trying to make that meeting better. We are trying to make people feel comfortable, and if people feel comfortable and they feel included and they feel accepted, then we're going to get more from the conversation. So all those things are good, but when you ask yourself why the guy said what you said 30 minutes later and got credit for your comment, it may be because you didn't confidently keep your space in the room so people heard you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that men are good at, and we need to get good at, and maybe we don't have to take up 2 seats, but maybe we get to have our own seat. And maybe we don't have to spend all our time as they're coming in the room anticipating the need and they're going to need that chair, and let them get themselves seated because they probably know how to do that, and just keep ourselves focused on what our job is.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 12 in here. There are 12 different things that women tend to do. And I'll tell you, I don't do all 12, but I probably at some point or the other in 10 of them. And it helps you understand how we're different and things that you can think about differently in terms of how you're behaving in the workplace to get yourself to the position you want to be in.
And I will take that book, and then Connie, the book that you mentioned, we'll take those titles and then circulate them to the team so people can have them to use that. I know I've heard in the past with that, because it's happened to me, I've said something, nobody heard me, then the guy next to me said the same thing, oh, that's a great idea, and it happens over and over again. But another strategy for women is if you're in a situation, you know you're going into a board meeting and you do have a meeting, tell some of your female allies ahead of time, so that when you do say it in the room, somebody else can say, oh, that's a good idea, oh, that's a good idea, and then you can kind of turn that conversation. So I hate that we have to go through so many strategies to get our voices heard, but I think it's just what we have to do. I just think it's a brass tacks.
Well, the other thing, I'll just pick up another one in here that we do, which maybe makes it harder for people to hear us, is one, maybe we're not concise enough so that people hear the essence of what we're trying to say. And maybe we belittled what we had to say. So I could be wrong, this might not be a good idea, I just wanted to mention, it's a small thing, but you don't have to do all that. You have an idea, it rests on its own, you don't have to put a prelude in there that makes it smaller than it is, just say what you're going to say.
Mm-hmm. I know people do that all the time. I'll do it to myself sometime. I'm like, this really might not be a good idea, but, or something like that. You kind of qualify it and say that. So I think all those are good. I thank you for sending that book, and I really want to read it and dig into those things. So Eugenie, what do you think are the top three qualities of a good CEO?
For sure, resourceful, empathetic, enthusiastic. Because if you love your job, you can do it in the best way, for sure. A good problem solver. About loving your job, I always tell this to my students. Confucius says that if you love your job, you'll never have to work a day in your life. So this is true.
I think it's true. One of my old bosses in my company said, if you love it, it's not work, it's play.
Yeah.
And it is.
Yes,
it's
yes,
play
yes.
almost, right?
Yes. And I didn't tell you the news about Indianapolis. I'm opening the school here.
Yes,
as well.
fantastic.
Yes. Because I would like to.
She's taking students' applications.
I would like to help enthusiast young girls and boys to enter in motorsport with the shortcuts, and I think that racing team, U.S. racing team, will appreciate to have a skill prepared mechanics and race engineer to bring working on track during race events, and. I decided this because I often receive requests from U.S. racing team for mechanics and engineer. I have to send students from Europe to U.S. with many problems of visa, of traveling, and so I would like. I know it's a challenge because the culture is different. We have good competencies, and I would like to bring these competences in the US and to give the opportunity to patients that have dream to work in motorsport to do it.
I wish you the best success because Kim's looking for some good mechanics over there. So you might have a pipeline into her shop. Connie, what do you think of the three best characteristics of a good CEO?
Gosh, perseverance, curiosity, and flexibility.
Great. I think those are all great. Kim, do you have any to add?
Well, I think you have to love what you're doing. You have to be high energy, and you have to be able to lead.
You have to be able to lead. So we've got just a few minutes left. I've got some fun questions that I want to do just so the audience can get a little sense of who you are and your personality. So tell us what your guilty pleasure is. Kim, I'm going to start with you. What's your guilty pleasure?
Am I supposed to say alcohol?
It's all right.
No, because I'm going to.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'll say it, alcohol.
Mother's little helper, right?
And pizza.
And pizza. Right. So I'll meet you at the bar later, Kim. What about you?
Wine.
And wine?
Red wine.
Red wine. Well, that's all around. My guilty pleasure, if in case anybody's interested, is jalapeno flavored Cheetos. I love them. Absolutely. And they really go good. Excuse me, they go well with a glass of Chardonnay. Absolutely. Eugenia, do you prefer to read books or listen to podcasts?
Say it again.
Do you prefer, is it your preference
Yes.
to read a book or to listen to a podcast? Book.
All the time.
All the time. What about you, Connie?
Yes.
I've only recently gotten into podcasts, so I'm kind of moving from book to podcast, but yeah, I'm just selective on which ones I listen to.
Book.
Book. I'm a book reader too. I like to read books. Would you prefer to drink a martini or champagne?
Martini and red wine.
How would you, Connie?
Martini.
Martini?
Dirty, please.
Martini.
I'm a champagne girl. This is a more serious one. That's not the fun one. Hold on, I have a couple more. Oh, here we go. What are name three historical figures, so they have to be dead, that you'd like to have dinner with?
Well, Winston Churchill
For sure. He would be on my table too.
and Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
I have to do three.
One more.
Just one more, right?
That was hard. I don't know.
You don't know?
Toto Wolff.
Total Wolf.
Oh, there we
He's
go.
not dead.
I can
At
think
least
of
not
lots
as a
of
few
live
minutes
people.
ago he's not.
What did you say?
Okay, say Enzo then.
There you go. There you go. There you go. So let's finish up here, and we just thank you for the fun stuff. What do you think is the biggest threat to women climbing into the CEO seat?
Their own fear.
I would agree with that. All right. Well, that will end our comments. Thank you so much for your participation. This has been delightful. Thank you for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you.